Have you ever felt like there's something more to life than what you're currently doing?
Do you see the world differently than everyone around you?
Do you ever dream of achieving big things but feel stuck? We're Tiffany and Sid, and we are the Cycle Breakers.
Not long ago, no one believed in us.
The people closest to me said I'd make a great receptionist.
And mine completely abandoned me and left my life.
We started our journey 5 years ago in a basement.
Now, we live our dream life in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. But how did we get here?
We saw a life that was much better than the one we were living.
And broke through the blocks that hold most people back.
Like self-sabotage, crippling self-doubt, and the fear of rejection. But we knew we were made for more, so we bet on ourselves to make the life that we wanted.
And jumped into a life dedicated to breaking old cycles and patterns.
And now we live on 97 acres in the Smoky Mountains. We travel the world speaking on stages, and we help a small army of people break their cycles as well.
We're the Cycle Breakers, and we break through blocks that are holding most people back so we can go live our dream life.
Welcome to the Cycle Breakers Show. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Cycle Breakers Show. Super excited to be joined by the one and only Clay Moffat. We're going to be talking about all things breaking the cycle and his journey to becoming one of the top. Would you call yourself a high-performance coach, Clay?
I wouldn't really call myself anything, to be honest.
To becoming one of the world's top high-performance coaches. So welcome to the show, Clay.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Tiff.
So for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Oh, man, it's such a loaded question every time. So who I am is just another collection of dust making his way through the universe. If you really want to get the, philosophical side of things, like, I find that's a very tough question to answer because I'm so much more than what I do for my work. And you notice so like, tell me, like, who are you? Like, oh, I'm an engineer. Oh, I'm a coach. Oh, I'm a marketing professional. Like, they identify with their jobs and I don't. And then I had this huge breakthrough, like mentally, and whether it's a breakthrough or it's a breakdown, like midlife crisis is like still to be determined. But I was sitting at my computer. And like I've listened to a lot of Alan Watts and a lot of Ram Dass and a lot of like Zen Koans, and I was literally sitting at my computer just working away, and then the penny dropped, and I ended up writing a 14-page document that broke down what I actually meant. And the summary of that is that like I, who I am, is just a continuation of the Big Bang. Like I'm the evolution of that, how it's showing up today. Right. And that's why we're all connected, and that's why we're all on the same path. So who I am, that's my answer.
There we go.
What I do is a very different question.
So what do you do in this world for people who aren't familiar with your brilliant work?
Much the same as what you do, I would argue. We just have different methodologies of achieving it. I help people, so corny and so lame, like break the shackles, break the cycle, step into their real identity, become their true self, like all these kind of things. I just really help people live a better life, make more money, and do the things they want to do with the time they have on this earth. That's it in a nutshell. And how I do that is a variety of different ways. I 100% manipulate people. Absolutely. I'm not like anyone that says that they're a coach and they don't manipulate is full of it. No offense. It's like what we
I tell people that's how I start my trainings.
Yeah. And I think like that's actually something that's very important. A lot of people think that manipulation is a bad thing, but manipulation is actually an engineering term because you manipulate metal and you manipulate things to build something. And that's the way I look at it. Like I'm manipulating someone to build the thing that they want to build. So that's what I do. I am a expert manipulator. That's what I do. And I use hypnosis and NLP and neuroscience and a lot of other psychological and sociological theories put together to help them get what they want faster. And actually, the best way is I help people align what they consciously want with what they subconsciously want instead of having alignment. Because that's usually what I find. Like people say, yeah, like I want this, but I keep doing this. I'm like, well, then there's a misalignment between what you subconsciously want and what you consciously want. So you put them on the same track and then they get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. So what brought you to this work?
That's hilarious.
What parts of your story do you want to share?
No, I'll share the whole thing, but like I never got into this work to help anyone else, ever, like at all. This is all about me, all of it, 100%. I had no intention of becoming a coach or a hypnotist or a mindset specialist or performance, none of it. Didn't want a bar of it. I was pretty, no, not pretty. I was a juvenile delinquent. Like, let's just call a spade here. There's no pretty, there's no somewhat, like I was. I was a misfit in school. I caused a lot of trouble. I was a problem in the Navy. I was a problem in the oil and gas field. Like, I was the problem, me, and the way I was showing up. And I got knocked back for a few promotions in the Navy. I got put in detention a lot in school. And I got knocked back for a massive promotion when I was working in the oil and gas world, to the sum of like over 150 grand a year, which is pretty significant. And at that point, it had happened so many times, repeated on loop. I was like, okay, it can't be everyone else that's the problem. Like the only common denominator here is me. Like I have to be the thing that's like getting in the way of my success, causing all the problems, whatever you want to say. And so I started on a journey to learn how to manipulate people into giving me what I wanted. And that's how I started. And I started very unsuccessfully. And after 2 years of learning language patterns and pattern interrupts and embedded commands and all the things that you can do to like confuse people so that you can like coerce them, and like coerce, it's a bit of a strong word, convince them, trick them is probably a better word to use, into like giving you what you want and getting very limited results. I had a breakthrough that perhaps if I just became the person they wanted to give things to, then I get those things. Now, that was a much harder task because it meant I had to go sort out my own shit instead of just like tricking people into doing things. But once I started doing that, the results changed dramatically and they changed very, very rapidly. So yeah, I started in this process without the intent of wanting to help anyone. And then I started to change and I started to see really good results. And then my friends that were here living in Thailand saw massive changes and like, hey, what the hell's going on here? How have you done this? And so I started doing it with them after having done NLP trainings, hypnosis trainings, blah, 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 blah. And the business kind of just started out of that.
Awesome. So I want to come back to what you kind of started the show with, this identity piece, because this was a big, something that you and I have talked a lot about back and forth.
Yep.
And a lot of people, there's a lot of talk about shifting identities. What is your perspective on how identities impact people and keep them stuck in a cycle that maybe they don't want to be in?
Well, identity is everything. Like it's absolutely everything. If you start to identify with someone who is unlucky, you will find all the ways that you are unlucky and you'll filter through that. If you identify as someone who has been molested or raped and you're a victim of that, then you will perpetuate the situation. If you're someone that identifies as a winner and you're going to continue to win, you will start looking for all the ways, and you'll filter the information through all the ways and the lenses that bring you as a winner. Like, it's just how it happens. So shifting identity is something that naturally evolves over time, and you can't not shift identity. It's just, are you shifting further and further into an identity that takes you away from what you consciously want? Or are you shifting more into the identity of what actually brings you the results that you consciously want? And the shifting part of the process is a process that's naturally going to happen because of the way you start filtering your memories. And memory is an active synthetic process, which is a fancy way of saying that every time you access a memory, you change it. And you change it based on the state that you're in. And you're going to change it based on the filters that you look through, which is why you will always be shifting your identity, because you're going to naturally go through these processes anyway. So why not consciously hijack the processes and make the memory something that's more useful for you? That's the whole premise of why hypnosis and NLP work. Like, if a memory was frozen and you couldn't edit and you couldn't change it, none of the stuff that we do works. Like, it doesn't. You can't go back and change it. But because you can change it, you can change your identity, and you can change it rapidly.
And what about if somebody becomes too connected to an identity? I know in one of the messages you sent me, you were talking about like Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, like that identity of the astronaut after it was gone. What happens if people become too connected to an identity that maybe has passed?
You mean what happens to them, or how can they identify with something else?
As in, like, how do they get, how will that over-identification keep them stuck?
Oh, right. So, I mean, like, let's go one better. Let's look at the president, right? When I am the president of the United States, I'm the Prime Minister of Australia, I'm this, like, you have all this power because you are in, like, you're, as they say in Australia, you're the swinging dick. Like, you've got all the coaches there, like, everything's amazing. Like, you can do whatever you want to a degree, right? Some people probably took that a bit too far when they were in power, but whatever. And identifying with that and really connect and owning that, like, this is who I am, as opposed to this is a job that I'm doing, then starts to create a huge power struggle when you get out of it. Because now you no longer have that power, and that was a part of who you are, versus it was a job that you were doing. Versus, I look at a job as stewardship, right? Like, you are a steward. So, like, if someone enters in to be like the mayor of New York or Miami or something, they are the steward of New York. They are there to plan and help and grow New York. So if you start identifying as the steward of New York versus like, I am the mayor, like, no, I'm just a steward and it is my role to do this. That's it. Like, it allows you to give you this de-identification. The over-identification starts to cause a lot of havoc for a lot of people, because they, for lack of a better word, they become impotent when they no longer can identify as that, because, like, it's all their power and it's everything that come in. It's no different to a stay-at-home mum who's raised her kids and made her kids everything for the previous 18 to 21 years. Now they've gone out of the house and, like, oh, I'm a mum, but now I don't have any kids to look after. Right. So it goes both ways. Like, it doesn't matter whether, like, it's looking after your children, doesn't matter whether it's a job. Like, over-identifying with something it's a double-edged sword. It can give you a lot of motivation, a lot of movement to, like, really inspire you to, like, really do well. At the same time, if and when it ends, and everything does end, it can leave like a wrecking ball of destruction and a path that just doesn't really do well for anyone. So it's an interesting process to be in.
So how would, if you had to tell somebody simply how they can start that de-identification process to get out of that cycle of being stuck or feeling powerless, feeling worthless, whatever it is, that, you know, kind of midlife crisis phase, where would they start?
Stop saying the phrase "I am." And when someone says, like, who are you? Don't answer with your job. or answer with, well, what I do is X, 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 X. Because it all, if we go back 10,000 years, the language that we're all speaking now was not the language that they were speaking back then. Right? And we have a whole host of problems that they didn't have back then. I get there's been a lot of technological advances and things like that. So language is the thing that builds our reality. It's also the thing that restricts it. And saying, I am a lover, I am Australian, I am a coach, I am the kind person, I am this, like, these are all things. Even if you go back like 200 years when we start talking about the King's English, they didn't say, I am angry. They say, anger is upon me. Like, they're not even identifying with the emotion. It's just this transient thing. But the way that we've changed language shifts. And if you start getting into Spanish and German and other languages, they also do not identify with like the emotions. And if you look at other cultures, they typically don't have the rates of depression that English-speaking cultures do. Now, I'm not suggesting that it's purely through that. I am suggesting that it would definitely play a part in the severity of things because it's not an identity statement, right? And if you look at when we're growing up, people say, oh, who are you? You say, oh, I'm Tiffany, or that is Tiffany, like, or that's Tiff, right? That's how it is. I'm Clay, or that's Clay, that's my baby Clay, whatever it is, like, that's how you're taught to identify. And so what starts to happen is there starts to become a buildup of associations. And that buildup of associations means that, okay, I've been Clay my entire life. So when I think of Clay, it's like saying, I'm in a relationship. So when you're in a relationship, what is a relationship? I'm asking you the question.
A connection between two people?
No, it's a noun. A relationship is a noun. That's it. A relationship is a noun. It is the verb of relating to someone else, frozen in time.
Mm.
So if you're in a relationship, you've now frozen the entire relationship, the whole amount of time that you've had in this one little word, bang, sandwiched together, versus asking, how do I want to be relating to this person now? And you go back to the process. And by going back to the process, you remove all the crap that's been thrown into the mix for the last however many years. You remove all the good stuff too, but that's fine. Because what are you doing? You're dealing with the present moment versus all the other things. And that's really what you should be doing, is dealing with the present moment. And so when you start looking at I is the biggest normalization of them all, because I is the sum of your entire experience frozen into this one moment. And your name does the same thing. Because when we grow up, it is I am Clay. Oh, how you going? I'm Clay. Oh, nice to meet you. I am Tiff. And now that one word encapsulates everything. All the good, all the bad. And I'm not saying don't ever use your name again. I'm not saying...
We're going to listen to this episode. Like, I don't even know what to say.
Right. But it's so simple. My name's Clay. Right? And becomes very different to I am Clay. There was a gentleman, I'm going to mess up his name, Alfred Kolyski, and he wrote a book called The Science and Sanity of Meaning. And many moons ago, we're talking a long time ago, a lot of his work was included in the work that sprouted NLP. And from what I got told by one of my mentors who's very good in the NLP world, John Overdorf, this Alfred gentleman, petitioned to get the word or the phrase I am removed from the English language. Like, that's a bit of an extreme way to go about things, but that's how sincerely he thought this over-identification could actually start limiting people. So when we're talking about this I am process, to try and remove it completely from vocabulary is going to take a lot of effort and a lot of cognitive load. And you have to be thinking about everything you're saying quite frequently, almost all the time, because it just comes up very frequently in conversations. How are you feeling today? Oh, I'm okay. Oh, I'm a bit sad. Oh, how are you going to work? Oh, I'm really stuck. Like, it's just like, it comes up everywhere. So the whole identity process is something that we can't really escape in the English language. Yet at the same time, if you're aware of it, you can definitely lessen the damage. Like, if you're not aware of what is going on when you're saying certain words and the substructure of what's happening with the language, then you have no idea about the influence that it's having on your filters and on your perceptions of the world. But once you can start cracking into that and tuning into what is actually going on with that and what it could actually do and the possible implications as you move forward, then you can start mitigating and separating yourself from the impact of what it is. To the point where in your head, you can be saying, well, I say, I am Clay, I am a coach. In your head, it's like, I'm just telling the person what I do for a living at this point in time. Because you're aware of it. But if you don't even have that awareness, there's no chance. Like, it's definitely binding the two together.
So what would be the better option for people to say? I mean, you could say anger is upon me or frustration is upon me, or would you say something like, I'm feeling this?
Yep. Even that separation is a separation from I am angry.
Yeah. So in your own,
you will probably get a few looks from people.
I mean, it might be fun, you know,
Good
as a
pattern,
experiment.
Yeah.
So in your own journey, what would you say has been the biggest lesson that you've had to learn or the biggest cycle that you've had to break?
Oh, that's pretty good. I don't know about the biggest, but it's definitely the most recent. So, no, the biggest would be drinking alcohol.
It's very interwoven into all of Australian culture.
Very much so. But it wasn't necessarily the culture. So I think what happened with my process of growing up is something somewhere along the way went wrong. Right? Apparently I was quite a happy little kid. And then the wheels and the rails went off and I went down a different place and it was just not a great place to go. Whatever, each to their own. So I continued moving forward and I continued doing things and I just carried on like digging myself down this track. So when I was 13, might have even been 12, pretty sure I was 13. We went camping up north of Perth, about 2.5 hour drive. And I ended up sculling 2 bottles of vodka in the space of like an hour and a half. And I woke up 2 days later on blankets that were wet because I'd pissed myself on my parents' living room floor. So had I had what the doctors said, 2 more shots of vodka, I would be dead. Because I would have needed a blood transfusion because my alcohol content would have been so high and they didn't have any of my blood type in the hospital. So instead they pumped my stomach and drained everything out and they said, he's just got to ride this out. Have no recollection what happened for 48 hours. Woke up in piss-stained blankets on my parents' living room floor. Good times. And you think, oh yeah, that's going to get him to sort it out, that he'll definitely, no, I wasn't the problem. So then I was pretty unhinged through high school. I was kind of a misfit. There's geeks and jocks and, you know, the academics and blah, 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 and the music guys. And I really got on with all of them. I didn't really have a problem with any of them. Everyone's just doing what they're doing. And so I used to get invited to a lot of parties. And I got invited to this one party with all the cool kids. and ended up getting hammered drunk again. Ended up falling down an embankment into a rose bush, tore shreds off myself, like was covered in scratches, and then got drunk and went back to my friend's place where I was staying and tripped over and fell into the heater and like burnt all my arm and then spewed up all over the floor. Needless to say, I was never invited back to his house again. And that was when I was around about 15 or 16. Also, didn't really get invited to go to those parties with those people anymore either. But again, that was their fault, not my fault, right?
Of course.
Then I joined the Navy at 17. And for my first Christmas leave, I came back, landed in Perth from Melbourne, got home, got showered, got changed. A friend picked me up, a good friend from school, and we went out to his work Christmas party and got hammered drunk again. This time, however, apparently I tried breaking up a fight, or there was some aggression there, and I got thrown through a balcony railing and fell 12, 13 feet head first on the concrete. I still got the scar here. You can see it right there. Like I cracked my skull there. And was in induced coma for around 4 or 5 days. My memory's pretty fuzzy in this, so it might be less, it might be more. And then basically I had to learn to kind of walk and talk again in the next 2.5 weeks because I had to go back to the Navy and I didn't really want them to know. So needless to say, had I told them about it, technically they had a duty of care because I was influenced by the Navy culture and I could have got a pension, all those things. Glad I didn't, but could have done that. So like I would have actually been fine to tell them, but I was like, I don't want them to know. So that ended up causing me to get back class because my brain was complete mush for about another 6 months and caused a whole bunch of problems in my career to start off with. Then the Navy culture back then was like very strong drinking culture. And so that just kind of exacerbated things. Which then leads to another incident where I got in a huge fight in Fremantle and I got arrested for drink driving. And then like the creme de la creme was when I got arrested and thrown in jail in Houston, Texas for breaking into someone's house. Because I was hammered drunk and I thought I was going back to my friend's house. And it was sleeting in Houston and I was wearing flip-flops, a singlet and a pair of jeans. So it was damn cold. I just left Australia in the middle of summer and came to Houston in the middle of winter and it was sleeting. It was not fun. So yeah, so I was freezing, banging on this door, broke into the house. Little old lady with a shotgun told me to get out and I went and sat on the curb, waited. So I got told. My recollection of that was waking up in a jail cell and trying to open the jail cell door to walk out because I thought it was a dream. So that was probably the biggest thing that needed to stop. I don't know what I need to deal with. I still to this day don't know what I resolved. I can't tell you. I didn't do like one specific hypnosis session. I didn't do this one thing. But whatever it was, I had learned that the way to deal with my problems was just to drink. On that last time that like I was telling you about with regards to me getting drunk and locked up in Texas, my dad got diagnosed with cancer and he was going in for surgery. And so that was on the Thursday or the Friday morning, which is a Thursday evening in Texas. And I was messaging my mum to go back and forth, like, we don't know what's going on. He still hasn't come out yet. Like it was a very complicated operation. We're not sure what's going on. So that started weighing on my mind. And obviously I didn't know how to deal with things back then. So what did I do? I went and drank because that was what I learned. Like that's how you deal with things. And like you just like drink your problems away. And then, yeah, it caused like a whole ton more problems. And yeah, so I basically stopped drinking. And I didn't do any hypnosis to stop drinking. I didn't do anything crazy. I was just like, I just need to stop drinking. It's going to kill me. But I think the collection of the work that I'd done about dealing with all my own problems is what allowed me to just stop. It wasn't like I needed Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't consider myself an alcoholic because I didn't drink every day. I could drink a couple of beers and be fine. It was just when I drank, I typically went out to go party. And to me, partying meant like no limits. And so I just do stupid stuff. So that was probably the biggest thing that I stopped. And it dealt with a ton of rage and aggression. For some
As you
reason,
were drinking or before?
No, like before I quit drinking, like, and after. I think the reason why it's been so easy is because I've dealt with like, and that's why I say like, there's no one specific thing like, oh, I can go back to the specific moment when I was 7 and this person was standing over me and they're doing this thing and blah, blah, like, I don't have anything like that. Like, I just don't. But through the collective accumulation of all the things that I've done and the processes that I've gone through, I am a much calmer, much more patient person. Still, obviously, got a lot of work to do because it's just never ending, right? You keep digging, you find more stuff, digging, you find more stuff. And then, like, even recently, like we were speaking about before, with regards to my boy, where he was just like having like spiral after spiral after spiral, and I was just getting frustrated. And then I ended up realizing this is like not even me. Like, why am I getting angry at this? And I'm supposed to be the person there providing him safety. Why am I getting frustrated? He's crying, he's upset because he doesn't feel safe. So like I'm literally doing the opposite of what I'm supposed to be doing. So that was like a huge thing. But like I said, I believe identity shifts happen, and when they happen, they're rapid. Once I realized what was going on, like it's been 6 weeks since that happened, and not a single incident that has happened with him has caused me to get angry or upset or anything. Like when change happens, it happens fast. It's just getting the person to the point where the change is ready to ignite, and then it happens. Doesn't mean that as you're going along, you might not have like a wavering point in the future, but that doesn't undo all the work. It's like the person that goes on the diet, which I hate diets anyway, but they go on the diet, right? And they've been perfect for like 90 days and they have to slip up on day 91. Like, oh, I may as well throw the whole thing in the window. It's useless. I screwed it up. Like, dude, yeah, 90 days perfection, you have 1 day off. Whereas before the 90 days, you were off every single day. Like that's an amazing track record to keep it up. And that's kind of the thing, you know, like the change happens, but just because the change happens doesn't mean you won't find yourself in a situation where old triggers can put you back into old habits temporarily, not permanently.
Yeah, it's almost like there's this buildup of like the work, right? It's like all the work summates on itself, but
Yep.
so many people go, oh, well, I fell off the bandwagon, so I might as well just be off, right? Oh,
Yep.
well, I had the sugar, I cracked the beer, I did the thing that I didn't want to do. I procrastinated today. So either this work doesn't work or, and they throw the baby out with the bathwater. But what they don't realize is like, it's like it gathers to this, like, for lack of a better term, breaking point where like everything shifts permanently. And like all of a sudden you're like, I don't want it anymore.
That's the whole point. Though. You're like spot on the money. It's got to do with the fact, and it comes back to what we're talking about at the start with like it being a relationship. It's a process. Like everything's a process. There's not a single thing that you're going to do in this life that is not a process. Everything is a process.
And sort of,
Life is the process of living. Like everything is a process.
yeah.
And so people think there's like this end point. Nope. No end point. It's just a process veering in a different direction. Like it's always continuation. Even up until you get to the point where you die or you transition or whatever you want to call it in your regard, that's fine. But that's just the start of another process. Like it's all a process.
Focus on the
It's hard to do
process.
anyway. Say again?
Yeah. Focus on the process and not the perfection of it.
Exactly. Because when you focus on the process, you're going to get when you focus on perfecting the process versus on reaching perfection, then it's about the fun of playing the game. And that's really what it's about. Like for me personally, I can't say for everyone, but for me personally, and for a lot of my clients, because I usually ask this question for pretty much every client, the things I excelled well at are the things that I found fun. And so I found a way to make things as fun as possible. It doesn't mean everything is going to be fun. I promise you, when I was in the Navy and I had to go and clean the sewage tanks, it was not fun. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm jumping into like 6 feet of shit. This is my idea. Like I want to do this. No. However, like you make the process as fun as possible for whatever you're doing. And some processes are just not really going to be that fun. But if you can find the fun in everything, then you start doing the process for the sake of doing the process because you enjoy the process. And when you're doing the process for the sake of enjoying the process, you're going to get much better at the process because you're going to pay more attention to it versus like, I have to do this outcome. No, you don't have to do the outcome. You don't have to do anything. Just do the process and choose to do the process. And even that, like, oh, I'm going to choose to do this. No, you're choosing. And every time you continue to do this, like, I'm choosing to continue to talk to you. Now, let's say something went horrible. Like, let's use Tom Cruise as an example. He's walked out on a lot of interviews, right? Because he is in the process of choosing. Okay, yes, this is a good interview. This is a good. Okay, this is not for me. Okay, I'm choosing. Like, and he's like, this is no longer for me. Like, I'm done. Like, let's go on a different point. And that's the process of choosing. You don't have to like stick to this thing unless you go into this thing like, okay, yeah, but I identify as someone that's got integrity. My integrity says I was going to do this thing, so I have to follow it through to the end. Well, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe your definition of integrity needs to change because now you're putting yourself in a worse position and you're actually damaging yourself. So the integrity part, there's actually no integrity there because now you're self-sabotaging your part for the sake of integrity. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Or, people pleasers. I have to think about other people's feelings. I had this conversation with a client this morning. Well, I'm in this new relationship and I just want to take it slow and explore, but this person is falling so fast for me. And I'm like, well, you're not responsible for their feelings. As long as you've communicated your needs and your intentions, what they choose to do in that relationship that's on them. So I love that because I think it shows people, especially things with like integrity, right? Like our values, like the definition of them is going to shift. And as long as we're not shifting it to avoid ownership or accountability for our behavior, but we're shifting it in the best direction for our, our highest good or whatever, however you want to position it, then you can change your mind.
Yeah. But most people think they can't, right? They think they're locked into because I chose this. Like, no, man, you're choosing this. Like, get that into your head. Like,
it's a present tense process.
Yeah, it's not like a past tense process. I chose this 10 years ago, Snapshot. And people say, oh, so what about marriage then? When you say till death do us part? I'm like, well, technically I haven't been married legally if we're going to get into it because my marriage was annulled. So I wasn't married. But like, so I got married to an amazing Brazilian, right? And we ended up getting the wedding annulled around about 18 months into the process. And she came back from Brazil after going there for Christmas. And we had this huge discussion. And before we got married, I told her I didn't want to have children. Like, I've been hard-nosed on that for as long. Like, my mum didn't believe me when I told her that Kate was pregnant with Mav. She's like, no, there's no way. Because of how hardline I was against it. But I was also of the mind, like, if something happens that's unplanned, then like whatever happens, like I'll be there and I'll do whatever I need to do to make it work and make it right. So when Patty came back from Brazil, she's like, okay, like I really want to start a family. I said, then we really need to get divorced. And she's like, what? Like, I told you from the beginning, like I do not want to be responsible for other people. I don't. Like, you're an adult, so I know you can look after yourself. I don't want the liability or the pressure or the responsibility or whatever you want to call it of looking after another human being. I just didn't want it. And so we ended up splitting because she was like yelling at me, well, why can't you change? Why can't you just like try it out? I'm like, try it out. This is not something you can undo. Like, once it's done, it's done. Like, I don't go, oh, let's just put the baby back. Like, it doesn't work like that. So it's not something I really want to try. Like, it's just not. And so like, she was very upset about the process. She's like, but you chose me. And I said, yeah, but I also chose you. And I said, like, if you choose me, understand like what you're choosing. What you're choosing is a life without kids. Like, know that. Like, it could happen. And if it does happen, whatever. But know that underneath everything, you are choosing a life without kids. And so we split. And that was an interesting conversation to have with her when obviously Kate was pregnant with Mav, because like, we're still friends. Like, we didn't split because we hated each other. We didn't split because we were bad. Like, we were great together and she's a great woman. So it was a tough conversation to have with her when Mav was coming around, but whatever. By that stage, she had got married and she was with someone else and had kids. So like, she was good, fortunately. But this whole process of everything moving forward, like thinking that, oh, like you said, like we said till death do us part, and we said this, I'm like, yeah. But like we did say that, and I agree with that. And at the same time, you got into the wedding based on a false idea. You thought you could change me and convince me into having kids. And so you said, till death do us part, to that guy who you thought you could change his mind into having kids. You didn't say, till death do us part, to this guy who was the actual person who was there at the time that didn't want to have kids. So you're not breaking anything. You were choosing something that was made up in your head. So you can make this choice and it's fine. And ended up working out all right. But there's a lot of people that go, well, no, like we got married, so we have to stay together. And I'm like, okay, if that's what you want to do, or that's what you have to do. And I've seen people do this because of religious circumstances. They're like, no, we have to stay together. I'm like, okay, so then stay together.
That's what happened with Sid. He also, I don't know if you know this, married a Brazilian.
Oh yeah.
She was a little bit more abusive, but in his mind, even though the relationship was completely falling apart, he was like, I'm a Christian. We can't get divorced. Like Bible says, can't do it. And so he stayed until she cheated, and he was like, well, now I have an out.
Yep. But that's the thing, right? So he stayed because he was choosing, and that's the point. Like he's continuing to, like, this is the thing. He said, I don't have a choice, but you do. And you were choosing to stay in based on the rules and the frames and the lenses that you have.
Yeah.
Like you have a choice. It's going to feel like you don't sometimes, but there is always a choice. And whatever you're doing right now, you'll continue to choose. And whether what you're choosing is what you consciously want or what you subconsciously feel you're forced to do, it's still a choice, even though it doesn't feel like one.
Do you think that's why a lot of marriages and relationships have so many issues now, is that when they do run into rocky times, it's well, I chose you, instead of I'm choosing you again every single day. I'm choosing to be in this relationship. I'm choosing to show up. Do you think people tend to come at it from the past tense mindset, and then they're just like, well, I just have to be here?
Absolutely. 100%. Because look at everything. So without knowing it, we're kind of circling back, but not. When you say, hi, I'm Tiff, or I'm Tiffany, I'm Clay, I'm Clayton, what you're doing is you're actually saying I'm all those things all the way back to this little tiny dude, this little tiny lady. You can't not. And so when, like, people are not really trained to stay in the present. And the brain itself is a prediction machine, especially the prefrontal cortex. That's what it's designed to do. It's literally designed to make judgments. Like the one thing that keeps people stuck is making judgments. It's also the one thing that keeps them safe. Like there's nothing about the brain that is all good, and there's nothing about the brain that is all bad. Like, you cannot make a single decision. Not one decision ever will have 100% positive consequences for you. It just won't. There's always going to be a decision that's going to have some negative consequences. And likewise, you cannot make a decision that's going to be 100% negative. There's always going to be some positive consequences. Unintended, whatever, it doesn't matter. That's always going to happen. Just like your brain, right? So the language is a great thing. It's great that we've got language because we communicate. However, language is also something that inhibits and keeps us in a prison. Your brain is a prediction-making machine. However, while it can make predictions, it often makes predictions based on past experiences, which can be flawed at best because they're done through a lens which is skewed and corrected by social, economic status, by your cultural status, by your financial status, by your past experiences, by your interpretation of past experiences, by your current social. Like, there's so many things that come into play that alter and edit what is actually possible. So because all these things happen, and because we're getting forced into these things, a lot of the way our brain acts is because it's making predictions on past experiences to like be able to determine, okay, this is what's happened in the past. So we can kind of assume maybe it's going to go this way. We're always thinking of the past, whether we know it or not. So to get into the present moment, like I'm choosing this person. Why am I choosing this person? Why am I still choosing this person? Is it because I want to be this person? Is it because this person makes me safe? Is it because I feel like I've got no other options? Is it because I feel like this is the best I can do? Is it because this person is choosing me and they show up every day in the most amazing way possible and I can see how much they love me? Is it because, like, what's the reason? Most people don't ever think about that. Most people don't think about the fact because the brain won't let them. The brain, by its default, will make the decisions about the future based on past experiences. So you're always thinking from past context.
And I mean, those are deeply uncomfortable questions, which, as we know, most people like to
Avoid
avoid
Like the
that
plague.
discomfort, to stay in the discomfort that they're in.
Yeah, because it's familiar, right?
Yeah.
Because it's familiar. What's that saying? Better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Yeah.
And that is like the best synopsis you can give of someone's nervous system. Your nervous system will fight to stay in the same amount of pain that it's in, rather than go through the pain of going through something that could be 10 million times better, but it doesn't know.
Yeah.
You got
Familiarity.
to fight for your losses, right?
Yeah.
Fight for your losses.
Familiarity is safe.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, if there is one lesson that you want people to take away from this episode, what would it be?
Good question. Everything's a choice. And that you're choosing everything that's happening in your life, albeit consciously or other than consciously or subconsciously or pre-consciously or whatever, you know, you want to put it in, but you're choosing everything. And if you're not happy with where you're at in life right now, it means what you're consciously choosing and what you're subconsciously choosing are not aligned and on the same path. So get them on the same path, and then you'll have the life you want.
Love it. Short and sweet, but powerful. All right. Well, thank you for joining me today. It has been amazing. I know I'm going to go back and listen. And to everybody listening, you should go back and listen, probably with a pen and paper, so that you can write down all the golden nuggets. Thanks for joining us, Clay.
Much obliged. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Cycle Breakers. This channel is dedicated to giving you the tools that you need to clear out the blocks holding you back so you can live the life that you desire. Now, before you go, as our special gift to you, we have our 7-day nervous system reset. These are the exact exercises that I give all of our clients in every single one of our programs to help them regulate their nervous system, to make that inner work and clearing out those mental blocks so much easier. The best part, it's absolutely free. Just click on the link in the description below and you'll get instant access.